Welcome in, and thank you for joining us today for a brand new deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're looking at a document today that is incredibly brief. I mean, it's almost like a piece of musical source code, you know?
Right, it's super condensed.
Exactly, yet it outlines the architecture of an entire global movement. So, for you listening, our mission today is to unpack this highly concentrated text and understand exactly how traditional sonic elements fused with modern electronic beats.
To create a completely new framework for dance music.
Yeah, and the source we are analyzing today is titled Afro House Story E01roots.md.
Published by 786 Music LLC in 2026.
Right.
And the fact that it's formatted as a simple markdown file, the .md, it actually feels oddly appropriate here.
How so?
Well, it's stripped of all excess formatting. It doesn't waste a single syllable. It just presents this compressed, deeply dense timeline of cultural and musical innovation.
It really does read like a mathematical proof for a cultural shift. The movement it's describing is the vibrant, rhythmically complex world of Afro House. And our goal for you today is to decode this brief document, examining the literal friction and the harmony of combining ancient acoustic resonance with a modern digital grid. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's dive right into it. The best place to start is right at the foundation, looking at the core equation the text provides.
The blueprint.
Exactly. It states it so plainly. House music plus African rhythms equals Afro House.
Which, on its face, seems almost too simple, right?
It does. It seems like a very straightforward blending of two genres. But if we analyze the fundamental properties of those two elements, we are actually looking at a massive collision of opposing sonic philosophies.
I love that phrase, sonic philosophies, because house music, at its core, is engineered around a highly quantized, rigid, four-on-the-floor grid.
It is the sound of the machine.
Right. It's born from drum machines, from step sequencers that are designed to execute a perfectly timed, relentless pulse. That strict, unyielding tempo is meant to induce a hypnotic, almost mechanized trance state in a club environment.
It's entirely synthetic and mathematically precise.
Every kick drum hits exactly on the millisecond it's supposed to.
Right. But then the text introduces the other half of the equation. African rhythms.
And that changes everything.
It does, because African percussion traditions inherently rely on swing, they rely on micro-timing, and on a fluidity that actively resists strict quantization.
They breathe.
They are human. Exactly. So this formula isn't just about layering a conga sample over a synthesized kick drum.
No, it's much deeper than that.
It's about forcing the rigid electronic grid to flex, to accommodate a deeply human organic swing.
And that tension is exactly where the genre finds its energy.
Yeah.
You're injecting the sterile, predictable environment of an electronic sequencer with a rhythmic approach that requires physical touch and intuitive timing.
Literal push and pull.
It is, and what's compelling is that the document grounds this theoretical collision in a very specific physical reality.
South Africa.
Right. The first major anchor the text gives us is South African roots.
Which is a huge detail. That geographical anchoring is a radical departure from how we usually talk about electronic music.
Standard EDM often exists as this sort of placeless entity.
Right, producers are trading digital files in the cloud. A track made in an isolated bedroom in Berlin sounds basically identical to one made in Tokyo.
The genre often floats in the ether, totally divorced from physical dirt and geography.
But by explicitly leading with South African roots, this document immediately grounds the digital medium in a specific cultural topsoil.
It changes the entire context of the sound. The machine suddenly has a hometown.
It really does.
And the text doesn't just provide the geographical coordinates, it identifies the architect of the specific fusion.
The pioneer.
The source explicitly credits one name as the pioneer of this sound, Black Coffee.
And it highlights a specific track to illustrate his foundational role.
We dance again.
What's fascinating here is how the text positions a pioneer like Black Coffee not just as a DJ or a producer, but as a cultural bridge builder.
A bridge builder. I like that. Let's look closely at that title. We dance again.
There's a massive amount of implication packed into those three words.
Because in standard club culture, dance is frequently framed purely as escapism.
Yeah, it's a way to disconnect from reality in a dark room. You go to lose yourself.
Right. But we dance again suggests something entirely different. The operative word there is again.
It implies a reclamation.
Yes. When you title a track We Dance Again, you are acknowledging that a shared communal physical experience was perhaps lost or interrupted.
Or fractured in some way,
Yeah.
and now it's being restored.
Exactly. It's a statement of continuity. It isn't just let's dance, which is, a disposable pop sentiment.
It's a manifesto.
It really is. It tells the listener that the modern laser-lit electronic dance floor doesn't have to be an alienating, solitary experience.
It can be a space of profound, rooted connection.
The electronic beats provide the global infrastructure, but the rhythmic approach brings the communal grounding.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of how music scenes evolve, a pioneer in this space is effectively mixing epochs.
Mixing epochs, how do you mean?
Well, they are taking the futuristic tools of the modern metropolis, the synthesizers, the digital audio workstations, and they are tuning them to frequencies that have anchored human gatherings for centuries.
So We Dance Again becomes a thesis statement.
Exactly. For utilizing digital technology to resurrect a deeply analog sense of community.
And that transition from the philosophical to the physical brings us to the actual tools used to build this sound.
The actual instruments.
Right, because the document doesn't leave us hanging with just high-level theory. It breaks down the sonic architecture. Here's where it gets really interesting. The text lists the specific musical ingredients that define the space.
Log drums, chants, and polyrhythms.
Those three components are the defining characteristics of the DNA we are dissecting today.
If we isolate the first two, the log drums and the chants, we can see exactly how that cultural bridge is constructed on a sonic level.
Let's analyze the log drum first.
Yeah.
By anchoring a track with a log drum, you are immediately subverting the expectation of traditional house music.
Because usually, that low-end frequency is dominated by a clean sine wave sub-bass from a synthesizer.
Right, it's mathematically perfect, it hits hard and clean.
But a log drum operates with a completely different acoustic reality.
It has a natural decay.
It has physical overtones, it has the imperfection of vibrating wood.
You are replacing the infinite sustain of a digital oscillator with the finite resonant strike of a physical object.
It actually vibrates the club speakers and consequently the listener's body in a fundamentally different way.
It introduces sonic friction into the low-end frequencies.
Friction is the perfect word for it.
And then the source pairs that low-end friction with the introduction of chants.
Which is another massive contrast.
Yeah. In a lot of mainstream electronic music, the human voice is heavily processed.
It's quantized, auto-tuned, chopped into tiny rhythmic fragments.
It's used essentially as just another synthesizer. It is stripped of its humanity.
But a chant serves a different function entirely. A chant relies on unfiltered human breath and the raw texture of vocal cords.
It introduces a call-and-response dynamic that is inherent to communal gatherings.
Exactly. When you hear a relentlessly sequenced house beat, your brain recognizes the machine perfection.
But the moment an unfiltered chant enters the mix,
it forces a sense of vulnerability and raw humanity back into the track. It acts as a direct counterweight to the mechanized hi-hats and snares.
To visualize this architectural tension, imagine walking into a hyper-modern glass and steel skyscraper.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The structural grid is flawless. The lighting is programmed in perfect synchronicity. That is the house beat.
Right, the foundation.
But instead of polished concrete floors and steel support beams, the floor is raw earth. And the pillars holding up the glass ceiling are massive carved wooden trunks.
That is a brilliant way to picture it. That is the texture the log drums and chants provide.
They keep the sonic building from feeling sterile.
That structural analogy is incredibly apt because it highlights why this fusion works so well.
The house beat provides a reliable, universally understood container,
while the acoustic elements provide the texture that demands an emotional response.
But the source document introduces a third architectural element that dictates how these pieces actually interact.
And it fundamentally changes the listener's relationship to the track.
Polyrhythms.
Yes.
When you introduce polyrhythms into that rigid four-on-the-floor grid, you essentially descender the listener.
Because suddenly, your brain isn't just locking into a single dominant pulse.
It's being asked to interpret 2 or 3 competing time signatures simultaneously.
This raises an important point about cognitive load in dance music.
Go on.
Standard EDM is designed to do the cognitive work for you.
Right. The kick drum anchors the tempo.
The snare hits exactly where you expect it to on the 2 and the 4, and the drop is telegraphed 16 bars in advance.
It allows the listener to go on complete autopilot.
Exactly. You just follow the instructions of the beat. But Polyrhythms entirely disrupt that passive consumption.
They demand active engagement.
They really do.
You might have the electronic kick drum anchoring the track in a steady 44 time, but the log drum is playing a dotted, syncopated rhythm, and a shaker is weaving a 68 pattern over the top.
It creates a rolling sensation rather than a marching sensation.
That rolling sensation. I love that.
And that rolling sensation alters how a crowd moves. Instead of a single dictatorial beat forcing everyone in the room to jump or nod, an exact uniform synchronization.
The polyrhythmic structure creates a conversational environment.
Precisely. Your body has to actively choose how to navigate the space between the beats.
You can't just passively follow orders from the sequencer.
Right. You might align your hips to the steady kick drum, but your shoulders might naturally lock into the swing of the log drum.
It forces the dancer to find their own unique pocket within the groove, making the physical act of dancing far more complex and highly personal.
It decentralizes the groove, which perfectly mirrors the communal, non-hierarchical nature of the traditional African rhythms the text references.
Because no single rhythmic element dominates the conversation.
They must all work in tandem to create the overall momentum of the track.
Which leads us directly to the boldest and most audacious claim made in the entire source document.
The final line.
The final line of the text doesn't simply categorize Afro House as an interesting subgenre. It explicitly and emphatically declares it an African musical language.
That specific terminology is vital to unpack, because designating a style of music as a genre is ultimately just a taxonomic exercise.
A sorting mechanism.
Right. It's a tool used by record labels and streaming algorithms to bucket audio files based on tempo or instrumentation.
It's a label for consumption.
But declaring something a language elevates the entire concept.
A language isn't just a category, it's a comprehensive system of communication.
It comes with its own syntax, its own grammar, and its own unique way of organizing the world and expressing complex ideas.
When the text frames this fusion as a language, it implies that these acoustic elements aren't merely aesthetic samples sprinkled on top of a house beat for flavor.
No, they are the actual structural syntax of the track. If this is a language, then the log drums and the chants function as the vocabulary.
They are the nouns and the verbs.
Exactly. And the polyrhythms act as the grammar.
The underlying rules.
Yes, the complex underlying rules that dictate how those vocabulary words interact, overlap, and weave together to form coherent musical sentences.
To truly engage with this music, you have to learn to speak and interpret that rhythm.
You have to understand the conversational interplay between the drums. When producers in this space utilize these specific polyrhythmic structures, they're doing something deeply subversive.
They are taking the universally understood global medium of electronic dance music
and using it as a carrier wave to broadcast a deeply rooted African linguistic structure.
It fundamentally flips the traditional dynamic of global club culture.
It really does. Because historically, you often see Western electronic producers sampling isolated, exotic acoustic sounds just to add a bit of texture to their tracks.
All while maintaining a strictly Western rhythmic grid.
Right. But this document describes the exact inverse. The house beat is merely the vehicle.
The foundational language of the music itself has been completely rewritten from an African perspective.
It is a remarkable synthesis. By leveraging the immense reach of electronic music, this new rhythmic vocabulary can permeate dance floors globally, bridging the digital divide with ancient acoustic principles.
The technology of the future is actively being used to amplify the rhythmic wisdom of the past.
Beautifully said.
So what does this all mean for us, for you listening? Let's synthesize the journey this highly concentrated text has mapped out.
We covered a lot of ground from a very short document.
We did. We started by examining the literal friction of the formula, forcing the unyielding mathematical grid of house music to flex and accommodate the fluid human swing of African rhythms.
And we saw how grounding this digital medium in South African roots radically shifted its context, moving it from the placeless cloud into a specific physical and cultural reality.
We analyzed how the pioneer Black Coffee utilized this fusion not just to produce tracks, but to engineer a cultural bridge, with We Dance Again serving as a manifesto for reclaiming the communal, grounding power of the dance floor.
Then we unpacked the structural tension of the sonic architecture, how the raw acoustic timbre of log drums and the unfiltered humanity of vocal chants introduce vital friction against the sterile perfection of synthetic beats.
And ultimately, we decoded how polyrhythms actively disrupt the autopilot of standard EDM, forcing the listener to cognitively and physically navigate the groove.
Elevating the sound from a mere taxonomic genre into a fully realized conversational African musical language.
It is an immense amount of cultural evolution and architectural innovation packed into a single markdown file from 2026.
It truly is.
And to bring this directly back to you listening to this deep dive right now, why should the structural DNA of Afro House matter to how you view the world?
It matters because understanding this text reveals a fundamental truth about how information, art, and culture evolve.
Culture is not a static product that is simply handed down for passive consumption.
No, culture is constantly being remixed and re-engineered. The creation of this musical language proves that profound innovation doesn't require discarding the past to build an entirely new, sterile machine.
Often the most revolutionary advancements happen when we look backward.
It demonstrates that integrating the deep acoustic roots of our history into the sleek, high-speed digital tools of our present is the most effective way to engineer something entirely unprecedented.
The friction between the old and the new is exactly where the spark of creation lives.
It is a brilliant reminder that our history and our future are not opposed to one another. They're deeply intertwined, actively informing and reshaping each other in real time.
They absolutely are.
And as we conclude our analysis of this foundational document, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you navigate the media and the art you consume daily.
Please do.
We have spent this time exploring how the deliberate integration of traditional acoustic elements like resonant log drums and unfiltered vocal chants layered over rigid electronic grids completely rewired global dance music, establishing an entirely new rhythmic vocabulary.
Yeah.
So, looking beyond this specific genre, what other ancient cultural rhythms or entirely forgotten historical frequencies might be waiting out there right now, possessing the exact structural friction needed to completely revolutionize the genres we listen to tomorrow?
What a phenomenal question to leave us with. The past is always waiting for the right carrier wave to remix the future. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We loved unpacking this highly concentrated blueprint with you, and we will see you next time.